A restaurant in our world is just recipes and a brand. Millions of restaurateurs will exist in 5 to 10 years.
Valued at $9 billion, Wonder is on to the next big thing. The company has plans to automate its kitchens with robots that can make more than 500 bowls an hour.
That bowl is in production, and every bowl comes out perfect every time.
As millions of people rely on food delivery apps each year, automation will make the process increasingly cheaper, faster, and more efficient.
You're going to get hotter food, faster food, so it's a completely different experience.
Now CEO Marc Lore has an even bigger idea, using AI to launch personalized restaurants. Here's how it works. You give Wonder a prompt and its AI will generate the concept, branding, menu, and recipes.
Imagine building a restaurant and then next thing you know, you're serving millions of people.
So, are we entering an era where anyone can become a restaurateur? Welcome to Term Sheet. I'm Allie Garfinkle.
So, Marc, you have lived many lives. As I was reading about you on the internet, you qualified for the U.S. national bobsled team, counted cards in Atlantic City, and at one point wanted to build the utopian city of the future. What is the through line? I feel like this tells me something about how you're wired, but I don't know what it actually is.
I'm just really curious. I like to learn new things. Also love magic. I just like, experimenting, trying new things. I find that's the best way to learn, is just throw yourself into something new and figure it out. So, yeah, that's it.
What is the craziest thing you've thrown yourself into?
Craziest thing? No, they're all crazy in their own way.
They're all crazy.
They're all crazy in their own way.
You don't get to say they're all crazy. There has to be one that is especially crazy.
I mean, startups are just crazy. Startup is not for everyone. I think anyone doing a startup that's raising billions of dollars is definitely got something not quite right.
What is that thing, though?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a coincidence that so many successful entrepreneurs were adopted, right?
Is that
true? I think a lot of it comes from childhood wounds, something to prove, and you're just wired in a different way. Like if you come from like a good family, raised, coddled, there's no chance. You can't compete with me. You know what I mean? It's just the drive is at a different level. And I think, that's what it really is. And then over time, I think you learn to harness it as a superpower, but it doesn't start that way.
When you were a kid, did you know you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Oh, yeah. When I was 4 years old, I have this thing I showed my grandmother that said I want to be a farmer when I grow up. And my grandmother was like, no, doctor or lawyer, because nobody ever went to college in my family. Nobody was a profession. And I said, no, I want to be a farmer because they grow stuff from nothing. This is at 4 years old. And that's essentially what entrepreneurs do. They grow stuff from nothing. And that's always been...
You said that at 4 years old.
I want to grow stuff from nothing. Yeah, that's why I wanted to be a farmer. I could actually remember the feeling as a little kid of like the thought of like you put a seed in and it grows something. Like that feeling is still with me. And I tried every entrepreneurial venture a kid can do, from newspapers to baseball cards to recycling to car washes to lawn mowing, like just anything. And from a young age, I always had this like incredible work ethic where I can get up in the morning, start mowing lawns, and mow lawns until the sun went down, and even after, without any, and then get up and do it again the next day. It didn't affect me. Like the actual quantity of work, it was never a thing.
Does that trait still exist in you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, I would say it hasn't mellowed over the years.
No. You combine, work ethic with an appetite for being able to take risk and sustain, productivity in an uncertain world. If you have that, it's a good foundation for being an entrepreneur, I think.
What has your relationship to risk been throughout your life?
I'm not a risk taker in the sort of physical harm sense. People say, you take so much risk at work, you must like do skydiving and motorcycles and stuff like that. When it comes to like physical risk, I'm very risk adverse. When it comes to taking risk in business, for sure, but it's not taking risk for the sake of taking risk. It is looking for those low probabilities of success with massive outcome. And so someone could look at that and say, that's risky, it's not going to work. I look at it and say, but look what'll happen if it does work, right? So that's the way, I think people underestimate the risk of the status quo and they overestimate the risk of change. Most people, they're afraid to take risks because it's unknown, but doing nothing is inherently very risky. It just doesn't feel like it because you're not making any decisions. It could be in work, it could be in a relationship. It's sometimes doing nothing is the riskiest thing you could be doing. And oftentimes when people do take the risk, they realize, oh, that wasn't as scary or risky as I thought it was. So that's just an inherent human trait, I think, that I don't subscribe to.
I don't buy it. Well, to your point, we naturally fear change as people, and risk often involves change in some way. And it sounds like the other thing you're saying too is, I really do believe we are who we once were in so many ways. I do believe people can evolve, but a lot of the core is always there. It sounds like for you, that's totally the case.
Oh, totally.
Okay, yeah, you are still
100%.
that kid who wanted to be a farmer.
Still the kid that wants to be a farmer. I still want to grow stuff from nothing. Still want to build stuff. I'm mission oriented that way. Like the money comes, whatever, but I'm motivated by the mission to build something. And I would risk and have risked substantial amount of my own wealth for that mission. And I think that's something that, I don't think you can learn. I think it's something you're kind of born with.
How did you think about the risk around buying the Timberwolves? I have to ask. I'm a big NBA fan.
Yeah, that does not go in the risk bucket.
That doesn't go
at
in the risk
all.
bucket. Okay, so what bucket does it go in?
That goes as just smart transaction bucket. So that was like, people could argue it was risky. It was during COVID, and it was, the lowest value team in the league, and there was some things around that. But if you just take a step back, you're buying a team. It's the cheapest real estate in the neighborhood, and NBA is growing like crazy around the world, and it's also a lot of fun. And it's not often you can invest in something that's fun that also goes up in value. Most of the things that are fun, you lose money on.
Like, what are you thinking of?
I'm thinking of racehorses, vineyards,
Motorcycles,
yeah,
boats.
boats. Like, I don't know. Most stuff just
Restaurants, actually.
Restaurants
famously
maybe too.
difficult business.
Yeah. No, it's serious. That's right. So the fact that the team appreciates in value and it's as much fun as it is made me just feel like, yeah, these teams are undervalued still.
Well, we've seen what the Lakers are valued, right?
Yeah.
The Suns. It's actually wild.
Yeah. No, and I don't think they're going to stop anytime soon.
So you think that it's one of those things like the value just goes up over time, like real estate?
Yeah, exactly. It is like a piece of real estate. It's uncorrelated. It's a combination of real estate and art in some ways, but it also can generate real cash. So it has a lot of advantages. And then it's uncorrelated with other asset classes for the most part, which makes it also a great investment. The prices of teams are the most correlated with the number of billionaires in the world. So they did a correlation study, and that was like the factor that drove price the most. So it does tell you a little bit something about it being more like art or real estate, right, than it would be just a straight financial transaction.
What has been the most surprising thing about owning an NBA team, or the most humbling?
It feels a lot like a startup. A lot of the same principles apply, building a great culture. And that's always hard in any organization. Coming into a new organization that already had an existing culture and trying to recreate the culture that you want. And Alex and I have spent a lot of time on that. It starts with bringing in the right people, getting them in the right spots, creating a clear vision for who you want to be, what you want to stand for, what your core values are, things like that. So the whole process is just humbling because, you're learning every day something new in a new area, new business, new sport. But it feels very entrepreneurial to me. That's what entrepreneurs do. I didn't know anything about food when I started Wonder. I knew nothing about retail or e-commerce when I started diapers.com. So it's humbling. You have to have that naivete to go into something. And that's where I think a lot of innovation happens. You don't know what you don't know, and that's a strength. Sometimes it hurts you, but then you just pivot out of it. But like now, when people ask me about e-commerce and they say, oh, I have this great idea for e-commerce, I very quickly find myself pointing out the things. No, let me tell you why that's not going to work. That's not going to work. And I'm like, you know what? Might work, because I know that feeling. If you're hungry and you have drive and you're willing to like pivot and move and try and weave and bob, and like you're going to figure it out. There's going to be some angle, right? And so people often think it's, the business you're in right at this second is the business you're investing, but you're really investing in, where that business might go in the future. And so that comes down to the person, right?
To that end, you built Jet in one of the most brutal corners of e-commerce, right? In one, you were at Walmart and then walked away to go after food. Of all the problems in the world, why? Because food is a famously difficult business.
Yeah, but much higher margins, the way I saw it, than e-commerce or even retail. So I think, the mission of Wonder is to make great food more accessible. And I think food industry is ripe for technological disruption. I think with automation, we could significantly bring down the price point of great food. Given the platform we built, we can bring that great food to geographies that don't have access today and at times a day that people don't have access to great food. So when the suburbs open till 2 a.m., you can get 26 different restaurants. The price point on the food is a lot lower today than it would be elsewhere. But then with automation, the price point will continue to come down over time. And I think we can get to a place where the price of fast casual food, which I would argue is higher quality than fast food, would converge, where it would not be much more expensive at all to get fast casual meal of high quality food versus just ordering fast food. So that I have a passion for that and bringing better for you food to people.
As you think about the world of e-commerce versus food, food is perishable, right? And it's also so emotional in a very specific way. Like when my delivery is late, that actually makes me sad, right? In a way that actually when I order something for my apartment from Amazon, it doesn't. When you think about your old playbook, things you knew worked in previous businesses, what has stayed true and what have you kind of just had to throw out?
The one thing is in a B2C business is customer is front and center, to just obsess over the customer and the customer experience. It's one of the reasons why we've invested so much in getting the Wonder locations close to where people live and setting a tight delivery radius so we can get it to you faster, hotter, more on time, more accurate. Like that's really important. So I think the customer hasn't changed. That's sort of front and center. I think, on the flip side, we used to think in e-commerce that it was challenging, the logistics and that part of the business, when in reality, it's kind of laughable because, you buy a box of diapers from Procter & Gamble, they send it to your warehouse, you put a label on it and give it to FedEx. Like it feels a lot less intimidating than buying, fresh produce that may or may not be the same quality that you bought last week, that has a shelf life, that you have to move through a cold chain and not break it, get it into your location, keep the cold chain, and then sell it before it expires. Like that's a lot tougher challenge. So I would say that was the big learning, is that food is a completely different beast because the product itself could be different and the product expires.
The other thing too is, to that end, food is a space where many have failed, right? Many ghost kitchens have kind of come and gone. Many food startups have struggled. What made you think you could tackle it and solve that particular problem especially?
If you looked at e-commerce before Amazon, it was sort of littered with a lot of people that, tried and failed.
Still is.
Yeah. But I think learning from the lessons and the failures of people that come before you, I think is a big thing. Absorbing that, being humble and knowing that it's going to be hard. You're going to need to raise a lot of capital. You're going to make mistakes. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to like having a clear vision, which hasn't changed from the beginning, and hiring great people, the very best people to go execute, and building the right culture so that people want to come, they want to give the best they've got. That's foundational. And so I think if you do that, you have great people, you have the right organizational structure, the right culture, they're motivated, and you have a big vision, that team will figure it out. And that's the bet. And I've put a lot of my own personal money at stake as well
You've got skin in the
to
game.
make that bet. Yeah, definitely.
When you think about failures of the past that you've learned from, whether yours or someone else's, what's one you brought to Wonder?
I don't think it's like one business. It's like pieces of it. There's too many things that have flown in my mind now, like micro failures at different places, either myself or watching it.
What's the one that jumps out the most?
I mean, I think at diapers.com, we were maniacally focused on the customer experience. I think we lost some of that with Jet. And I think that was a great reminder. The customer has to be number one. The customer experience, bringing that mindset to Wonder, I think is important. I think also the clarity around the vision and the strategy to get there and all its nuances. So a lot of times, you have a team and they're executing, but in their mind, they're thinking about the vision or the strategy maybe differently than the founder is. Even though the words are on the wall and everyone knows what it is, there's nuances around what the words really mean and how people interpret those words. So if you said, we want to be the best at X, what does the best mean? Does that literally mean number one, like the best in the world?
But with anything, it's hard to actually define when you're number one, actually. Unless in the NBA, actually, when you're number one. But in most things, that's actually more ambiguous.
But if you look at the strategy that we have on the wall on the room.
I would say, what's the strategy you have on the wall at Wonder?
I mean, it's called VCP, Vision Capital People. And it's a room that we meet on a weekly basis, and there's whiteboards around the room. And it's got, vision, strategy, organizational structure is on the wall. It's all color-coded, so you can kind of see where you're investing because it's color-coded like Taekwondo belts, so you can very quickly see, I got a lot of black belts here, a lot of yellow belts here. Is that the right?
Is that intentional?
Yeah.
Intentionally, it's like Taekwondo belts
well, so
because you intentionally level up?
I mean, there's a separate performance management part of the Taekwondo belt strategy, but I think visually it's a very easy way. Rather than having to remember what each color and level is, there's already a leveling system that's out in the world around colors with belts where a black belt is better than a brown belt and a brown belt's better than a yellow belt and yellow is better than a white. And so when you visually look at the wall, you can see where you're investing more and where you're investing less. You can see the spans of control. You can look at a black belt and see how many, blue and brown belts are reporting in. Maybe some black belt might not have as many, some do. And I sometimes just stare at the wall and think about the structure.
Is this something you'd recommend to other entrepreneurs? If they wanted to implement this strategy, how would they do it?
Absolutely. I mean, I could talk forever about this sort of performance management stuff, but we have a transparent compensation system too, so everyone knows what everyone else is making in the company. And
including you?
Yeah, including me. It's very structured. And each level is different color belt. And we have a performance management system every 6 months where at least a dozen colleagues will rate you across the behaviors that we value at Wonder, across performance management stuff and the leadership qualities. And then you get scored by all these people. And then you get written comments, and then AI will produce your report. And so this AI-generated report makes it easy for managers. It's objective. And then based on those scores and based on something called value above replacement, VAR, where we have a people that evaluate whether somebody is adding more value than somebody that you can get to replace them at the same level. And it's -3 to +3. +3 is extremely hard to replace this person at this level. 0 is neutral. -1, easy to replace somebody at this level. So you have this VAR and it's this matrix, and between your VAR score and your performance management score, AI basically calculates whether or not you should be promoted. So it's very objective. And there's a chart that shows you how much time in role you need to be before you'll get promoted based on
so it's all really
the
systematized.
curve that you're on based on the scores you got. So it's hard to do it in a short period of time. But anyway, you get the picture. It's very, there's a handful of exceptions every period where we disagree with the AI model and sort of the program. But
so you can disagree with the model.
You can, and it's got to be a good argument. A lot of times when people disagree with the model, then we sort of use it to update the model a bit. Like, yeah, you know what? That's a good point. Like the model's not incorporating that piece of feedback, and the model's getting smarter, and there's less exceptions every time. But I do like the fact that it is very objective. It's not like a manager that has a problem with a person or some personality conflict.
It's
or
not
some kind of
vibes in
thing.
any way, shape, or form.
Or worse would be, a woman or a minority or something being disadvantaged in some way. This kind of corrects for that. So
Now, there are people listening to this who would hate that, but I am the person who's like, no, objectively tell me how
Yes.
good I am or am not, so I can know the objective ways in which I
and
can
it's
get
fair,
better.
right? It's
Yeah.
more fair.
Well, it seems like I think giving feedback is actually really hard. But I like the idea of sort of some of it just being database. I mean, it does make me wonder about how you view the conversation around AI and jobs generally. Are there concerns from your perspective about AI replacing jobs in food?
I mean, in our case, I think it's going to be the opposite. I think we're building something called Wonder Create, which would allow anyone in the world to create their own restaurant from an AI prompt using our ingredient library and our equipment.
Can you explain how this works and how it ties into the set of infinite machines?
Yeah. So let's say you're an influencer or you're a personal trainer or even a high school student. You come to Wonder Create and you say, I want to build a fast casual Mexican concept, for Gen Z, for people that, love to cycle and they want to lean into or higher carbs, lower protein. Like just that would be your prompt. You create, an AI would come up with a name for your restaurant, would brand it, come up with a logo, would come up with all the images, all the meals, the recipes, price everything, do all the nutrition information, full on restaurant. You can look and see how it looks on the app or online. And then for $10 a month, you could publish it and then it would go live in all Wonder locations. So in this way, the restaurant scales like software. Like a restaurant in our world is just recipes and a brand. 152 of those ingredients are in what we call the infinite sauce machine, where the machine could make on demand.
I'm sorry, what is the infinite sauce machine?
The infinite sauce machine, not to be outdone by the infinite
The infinite
bowl
bowl
machine.
machine, yeah.
And then also the infinite beverage machine. So a lot of infinite machines here.
I'm
But-
trying not to laugh too much because the image I have of the infinite sauce machine is, I want you to know, it's like a Willy Wonka thing.
It
that
is
I'm
Willy
imagining.
Wonka.
Okay, it is Willy Wonka.
It's Willy
Great.
Wonka. So there's 152 ingredients.
And these all exist already, or are they in production?
So the bowl machine is in production.
Okay.
Sauce machine will go into production in Q1. But it's working. It's bases, acids, reductions, oils. Like imagine perfect dispensing according to a recipe, and then using high shear blending and heating to kind of make the sauce. And then the sauces are in 3 and 6 ounce cups, and they get sealed, and then they get sent to wherever the sauce is needed inside of the kitchen.
Do you have
So
a
it's
favorite
all-
sauce while we're here?
I mean, I do love sauce.
You love it. You're just like, you're a sauce person.
That's why that's infinite. I just like an infinite number of sauces.
An infinite number of bowls as
Arrabbiata,
well.
that's a good arrabbiata. I like curry sauces, but can make anything. But that opens up the possibility for creators to create their very specific dressings or sauce recipes for the meals they're making. So it is very, very customized. And you combine the sauce machine with the infinite bowl machine, which could make 500 bowls an hour perfectly across 90 different ingredients. So, think, hot chicken, pork, beef, plus all your lettuce and all your veggie and beans and rice and all that stuff. It'll perfectly dispense it in a bowl, even turn the bowl so you can beautifully place everything. And every bowl comes out perfect every time. That bowl is in production. I think it's cutting out a significant amount of labor, which we're able to take those labor savings and roll them back into price to make the food more accessible for folks.
Well, it seems like this is one of those things where when I talk to a lot of people about AI, they do believe it will mint more entrepreneurs. And it seems like that's part of where you see this going from a food
I think
perspective.
millions of restaurateurs will exist in 5 to 10 years. I mean, anyone could build and own their own restaurant. Now, not just own it, but next year we'll have 340 locations. Imagine building a restaurant and then next thing you know, you're serving millions of people and you don't have to source the food, cook the food, deliver the food. All you have to do is market your restaurant. That's it. So if you're a follower, I mean, an influencer, you have a lot of followers, just market it to your followers. If you're a high school student, you can build a restaurant for your family, you know?
One of the things I do wonder about, no pun intended, is isn't the friction part of the artistry of a restaurant? Or is it one of those things what you're talking about is a fundamentally different kind of restaurant
I'm
than
talking a
the family on
fundamentally,
one?
I'm
Yeah.
not talking about that special restaurant you go to, on a Friday night and, the chef's back there with all the nuances, making the perfect meal, something you've maybe never had before. I'm talking about how do you systematize, fast casual food that is arguably, better for you, better quality than fast food. So think Chipotle, Cava, Sweetgreen, Shake Shack, Wingstop, like all the sort of restaurants that people eat at today. Imagine if we're able to, you know, bring down the price point quite dramatically and couple that with an incredible delivery experience that is 20 minutes to your door at prices that are much lower than today, with hundreds, if not thousands, of restaurants that be commingled in a single order, in a single delivery to feed everyone in the family from a different restaurant. Like that's sort of we're not too far off from that. That is coming faster than people know.
What can you help me visualize that? Because what I'm imagining is something extremely intense.
Yeah, so it is. You think about the drone coming and being really loud and coming down.
Like a mini helicopter.
Yeah. So this drone, we partnered with Zipline. This drone flies at 300 feet, so high in the sky. You don't hear it. You can barely see it if you look up. And then it gets over the point of your front lawn or wherever you say you want the food delivered. And then a wire zips down very quickly with a little box, and it lands on your front lawn. The box opens, leaves your package, closes, and then zips back up. So you never hear the drone. You don't see the drone. You just kind of see this wire, and it's very quick. It'll happen in seconds, really. It's very, very fast. And it's incredibly accurate. It's on time. It's faster. The food's hotter. And the price point, though, you don't have to tip a drone, by the way. You don't have to tip a
I'm
drone.
sure the drone would appreciate it, or that's just me anthropomorphizing, probably. How much can drone delivery really scale? Like, imagine we're sitting here in 2030, 4 years from now. How much? Make a prediction. How much has food drone delivery really scaled?
Well, that's only you're talking about 3.5 years out.
Yeah.
I would say across the U.S., probably closing in on a million drone deliveries a week across the different drone companies.
Okay, we'll circle back in 2030 and see if we're there. 'Cause
I
that
think
sounds like a lot to
a
me,
million
but
drone deliveries a week. Yeah, in many cities across the U.S. So now it's in Texas, but the expansion will start to happen. But I think if you fast forward to 2040, it's very much an everyday thing in areas outside of densely urban populated areas. I think it'll get there too. Not sure if we'll get there yet by 2040. Time moves slow when it comes to FAA and flying over densely populated areas, but in the suburbs and exurban and rural areas, I think it's going to be how people get their deliveries.
you've done a lot of deals through your career. Big name deals in a lot of cases. Grubhub is one of the most recent cases. Blue Ribbon Fried Chicken, another. What have you learned about M&A that you couldn't have possibly known 20 years ago?
Yeah, I've learned a lot about M&A.
You just looked like you just had 1,000-yard stare.
No, it was like there's a lot of battle scars from M&A. I think what I've learned is there's a spectrum of M&A. There's sort of M&A that is you're buying assets and you're not buying the business, you're buying assets. And then over here on this side, you're buying the business, not the assets, right? And I think you get caught a lot of times in the middle where you're buying like pieces of assets and pieces of a business, but you don't really have the assets, you don't really have the business, and it just doesn't add any value. So I think being very deliberate, this barbell strategy, I call it, where it's sort of like if you're going to do an asset acquisition, forget about the business. You're buying it for the asset. The asset alone better be worth what you're paying for it. In the case of Grubhub, $650 million to buy that. We were buying 250,000 couriers, 200 million deliveries a year, 400,000 restaurant relationships, a college business that had 400 colleges exclusively, partnered with Grubhub. So those are the assets. And you value the assets. You're like, yeah, it would be way more expensive for us to build those ourselves, and those are assets we want. Easy, right? Not thinking about the business. And then over here on the extreme here, if you're going to buy it for the business, it better be the best business in its particular area, right? So like Blue Room Fried Chicken, I would argue is a small acquisition, but I think it's representative. It is an iconic fried chicken place. It's a beloved brand in New York City, and we felt that we can buy a brand like that for $6.5 million, and next year that brand will do about $100 million in revenue, right? So buying it for the business, in this case, the IP, and knowing that the business makes sense. There's a lot of stuff in the middle that you gotta fight to avoid.
As we get wrap up, who's a founder or investor you admire and why?
My existing investors have been with me, Diapers, Jet, and
You have investors who've been with you through all of your companies?
yeah.
Should we
So
name
yeah,
names?
Tony Florence from NEA, Samir Gandhi at Excel. They were in all three companies. And so, I have a lot of respect for investors that you're investing in the business, yes, but also believe in the entrepreneur, and they're willing to back the entrepreneur through multiple startups. That gets me fired up. That gets me want to run through a brick wall for my investors, that show that level of conviction in me and the team. So I really look up to both of them very much.
Now the most important question of all of them. What is your go-to Wonder order?
Go-to Wonder order.
Yeah.
I like
You need to pick a favorite child.
the
can do it.
Maidan chicken skewer.
Okay.
Maidan chicken. Comes with 3 great sauces. It's very
What are the
healthy.
sauces?
This green sauce that is, there's a sort of red, white, and green. The green one is the go-to. I'm not big on dairy, so I kind of avoid the white one. Red is not bad. It's got like a salsa kind of flavor to it, but the green one is the go-to. So I'll just get that chicken and dip it in that green sauce. And
So part of the reason I ask is because I'll be honest, I haven't ordered from Wonder yet. I'm sorry. The Postmates reviews are only okay, and that is why. Should I go try the skewers anyway?
Well, don't order. The thing is, ordering on Postmates, think about it. The delivery experience is not from Wonder. So if you download the Wonder app, first of all, the prices are 20% cheaper. There's no delivery fees. So you're going to get your food much faster. You can order from multiple restaurants in one delivery. You're going to get hotter food, faster food. So it's a completely different experience.
Okay, so what you're saying is I shouldn't do it through Postmates.
Definitely.
Will it ever
not.
get to the place where there's any reason not to be on Postmates at all?
When I hear these things about the experience, I get concerned for sure. We only about 15% of our volume comes through, the delivery aggregators, and 85% through our own channels. So so most people are getting the much better experience, but there is a argument there.
The actual place we'll wrap then is best business advice you've ever received that you think founders need to hear.
I think at the end of the day, any successful business comes down to the team and the people. That's the most important part of the business. If you have the right people, and they're motivated, they're great people and they're motivated, the magical things happen. So you want to establish the right culture, but what is the right culture? I've always subscribed to, leading with empathy and kindness, which I think has served me well. Treat people the way you'd want to be treated, basically. Give more than you take. I think that's something I've subscribed to in my personal life and in business that's worked really well. So I give that advice a lot, because sometimes in the stress of the moment, things are very stressful in startups, that there could be a tendency to forget about that sometimes, and to keep reminding yourself at the end of the day, these are people that are killing themselves for you and the shareholders, and treat them how you want to be treated, and they're gonna give you the best that they've got. And if you got the right people and they're giving you the best they've got, and you got a big vision and the capital, then the magical things happen.
Marc, thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you.
And that was my interview with Marc. Now, speaking of AI, a thing to watch out for this week. Anthropic could beat OpenAI to the public markets. I have a bunch of sources telling me, and the headlines are everywhere, that Anthropic is moving towards filing its S1, that first IPO filing saying it's time, we're going, over the next few weeks. Now, I'll believe it when I see it, but it's a thing to watch out for because it could be among the most consequential IPOs of our time. That's it for Term Sheet. I'm Allie Garfinkle. We'll see you soon.